Deborah asked me to host today. And you're on mute.
All right. Well, welcome, host.
Indeed. Well, she said she was going to have a busy meeting, and if I hosted, it would make it easier for her. So I said sure. Because
Right.
I host, I have a whole list of meetings that I host. So hey,
Sure. Just add it to the list, you know.
add it to the list. No problem.
Hi, Judith. Good morning.
Morning.
So, I don't know if you can hear a mower out my window, but it won't be there for long.
I don't think I can, no.
Oh, okay.
I'm reading something in Nextdoor about the Woodstock National Project.
Mhm.
Oh, huh.
Which is the first thing I've read that said very clearly it was a trial balloon, not a proposal yet.
Yeah.
Oh,
And they have till October to close the land deal.
when you say close the land deal, you mean to close, like close on the purchase?
No, they can withdraw.
Oh, okay, in terms of withdraw their bid, so to speak.
The realtor says it's an engagement, not a marriage.
Ah. Okay, cool. Hi, Deborah. Connecting to audio. Yay, and you're on mute. I think I saw a good morning on your, if I could read lips, I think your lips said good morning.
Good morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning. So,
Somebody's got photographs of fishers chasing each other up and down a tree. It must be mating season.
Who are they chasing up and down a tree? Each other.
Fishers, a pair of fishers chasing each other up and down a tree.
So a fisher is kind of a
Weasel.
weasel.
Basically.
There you go. I was gonna
Yes.
say rodent. I was gonna say rodent.
About 42 inches long head to tail.
And
Wow.
very aggressive.
That's
Very,
pretty
very
aggressive.
These really well, so they must eat squirrels.
It can eat squirrels with like that.
they're eating chickens. They're
Yeah.
eating all kinds of
Cats. They'll eat cats. They ate my cats.
yeah, they're somebody was just telling me locally about a fisher problem. So they're even aggressive with humans. So just be careful.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So wow. So Kirk, you said a fisher, you had a cat problem with a fisher, or they could eat your cat?
No, they ate both of them.
You
Really?
really?
Yeah.
Oh no. So I've never, I've seen foxes in the area. We've heard coyotes howling.
I have a fox on my property. I've gotten it on
Yeah.
my video like 4 times over the course of several months.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I've seen bears. I had 2 bear sightings, 1 fox sighting. I've never seen a fisher.
Yeah,
Only
I have-
once. And it was on my camera at night. I didn't see it in person. It
Yeah,
climbed
they're-
the tree that is no longer here because I had to cut it down. It was dead.
Yeah, they're not very commonly seen. They of all the years that I lived where my cats, there were everything that you just listed was there, and I only saw the fisher twice, and that was when it was prowling around our house, and the cats were missing soon after that.
Oh dear, yeah. Well, I do let my cats out, but they don't. They're only out usually for about 2 hours at a time. But still, is a fisher a nocturnal animal?
No, not necessarily. They hunt squirrels, but I don't know the details of their.
I think they're active a lot. I mean, this video that somebody put on Nextdoor is daylight. The one I saw was like 3 a.m. So I mean, I didn't see it. My ring camera saw it.
Right. Yeah.
We should probably get started. It's
So,
10:04.
yeah.
And Jeff will be coming, I'm sure. And
yeah.
we are
I did-
already being recorded, as everybody knows.
Yeah.
I did want to mention that Jeff has some sort of scheduling issues. He is going to be here. So just we'll have to watch for him to admit him, and thank you, Laura, for starting the meeting.
So is Richard, are we expecting Richard?
No,
And
he's not.
Richard is not. He will be able to make next week, but we have heard from him, and I did fill him in. And he's been very good about looking at the Google Docs and kind of seeing what we're up to.
Do we have a
Okay.
quorum?
Yeah, we have a quorum.
Yeah, 4. We got 4 of us.
Right. So I'm gonna shift. Kirk, if it's okay with you, I'm gonna just do a little juggling of our plan today, because I did have some back and forth with Nan and also with Kai, Lord Farmer, who might actually join us for part of our discussion. Let me just get my list here. So I just wanted to say at the outset, I just wanted to thank everyone for the effort that we've made great progress to date on reviewing comments and made on the draft law since it was delivered on April 18th. And we've, at this point, we've gone through every comment we have received. And we haven't formulated all of our responses, or, you know, how we're going to address certain comments. Many of them, of course, there are those that are proofing and wordsmithing, etc., that we're just going to go ahead and do. But Nan has now been sent the link for, so she'll see the work that both from last week's recording and also from the work that we did last week. So she'll have that to begin to incorporate that and see if she has any questions back for us in order for her to make some changes. And also changes that we can ourselves make, as we've already begun to do, that we're confirmed on the language. She said to just go ahead and do. So, and then she'll check everything to make sure it all works, and then she'll send it back to us with any other revisions, and then we'll have that opportunity to check through, fully check through the any revisions to the subdivision and the zoning codes. Also, we're so the plan, our tentative plan, our plan was to move from the work we did last week, which pretty much went through all the comments from all the committees and boards and individuals that we received, except for the housing committee, because their comments were kind of a sort of a running list that each of the members of the housing committee had done their own piece and kind of added it sort of to a document. And so it really didn't fit into the same structure that Jeff, Judith, and I had developed, which is why we place it at the end of this draft comment document. So we would have the opportunity to go through the housing committee separately. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay, I'm a little tired. Pardon?
We just lost Kirk.
Well, we lost Kirk's video. We didn't lose Kirk.
No, there he is. Kirk's
But
there.
he's back.
Oh, all right. I've got, let me change what's going on here.
Yeah, he just went off video for a moment. But
I know. I had my screen set up so it didn't show non-video. So I thought he had dropped out. It's fine. Never mind.
Okay. So, so there's two things before we get going with, there are a few things before we get going with the housing committee that I want us to revisit. And in one instance, to discuss an issue that Judith brought to us from the planning board having to do with minor subdivisions. that Peter had raised with her. And I've now had a chance to get some just initial input from Nan, who's looking into that on our behalf. And so she made a few suggestions about things we might want to consider. Let's see, how can I do this?
Well, you should be able to share if you want to.
Yeah, it's unfortunately, it's on a different computer.
Well, that's
That
an
won't work,
issue.
Beth.
That's an issue.
Can't share it.
Well, while you're looking for a moment, I just want to ask Judy. So day after tomorrow planning board meeting is conservation subdivision topic, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a,
and I didn't
it's
know
a
whether
workshop meeting, and we're actually gonna have a training session, which
on
is gonna
conservation
be.
sub. Yeah, which I
Also,
want to mention.
a few resolutions for small stuff.
Yeah,
And
but I
who's
want to.
leading the
Absolutely
training?
worth coming if you want to come.
Yeah, I should ask Melissa for the input, but I want to make sure Kirk and Deb were aware of that. So Kirk,
Who's
you're
leading
Yeah.
the training?
So
I'm sorry,
just
what,
Who
I
is
was saying,
leading the training?
What?
who's
Who
what?
is leading the training?
So I'm aware of what this is. So this is a DEC webinar that was done about conservation subdivisions. The two people doing it are Ted Fink, who's a planner, who's actually had done some work for Woodstock years and years ago. I worked for him, actually he's in Dutchess County, and John Lyons. They are the people on this webinar. It's not a live interactive training, but it is a training. It's something that they did. I've seen parts of it. It's very good. And I think it's great that the planning board is going to have that opportunity. And I guess you get credits for that, right? Isn't it?
Melissa organized it.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks for that.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to take, what I'm really looking for is the language for, let's see, you know what, let's talk about the minor subdivision first, and then we can talk about, because I don't think we're going to be wordsmithing that right now. This, unless Judy, you want to, I mean, you had in your email described what that Coxsackie has a code, and they're not the only ones, but they have in their conservation subdivision a provision that can require parcels as small as 15 acres to be a conservation subdivision based on a variety of criteria. So I think if it's okay with you, I'd just like to explain that and then talk about, okay.
Please, I looked at the Coxsackie law briefly, but
Okay.
the thing that stuck in my head was the 15 acres.
So, so there's a couple of things about this. So the way our law is currently drafted, conservation subdivisions don't kick in until you're at 5 or more subdivisions. So 2, 3, and 4,
Five or more lots out of
5
one.
or more lots out of one lot, right? So technically, as and Nan is taking a look at it at Coxsackie, but as I understand it, as she explained it, is that it can be applied to any type of subdivision, but it does become harder. Like if it's a 2-lot subdivision, that could be like a family splitting it up or something. And she talked about it, and I think the issue we want to consider is, practically speaking, we can do a couple of things. We can change the definition of a minor subdivision to be 3 or more, and then that covers everything. Or we could have a specific situation for 3 and 4 lot subdivision, which is, I think, where Coxsackie was going with their 15 acres and above being subdivided, and that you can apply the conservation subdivision by having through a pre-sketch plan, have the applicant actually come in with a conventional yield plan and a conservation plan. So this is a technique. The planning board could do this and have the applicant, and we could say this would be required. They come in, if it's a 3 or 4 lot subdivision on 15 acres or more, they come in with both a conventional yield plan and a conservation subdivision plan. And then the planning board could look at it based on site conditions, and the planning board would have some considerations based on how the planning board wants to treat natural resources. For instance, if it's next to a wetland. So that wouldn't require a conservation subdivision for 3 and 4, but it could make it something that might be required depending on site conditions. The other, yeah. Does that make sense?
I just want to point out in the current language, boy, I'm getting an echo. In the current language, the applicant can request it. The planning board can't require it. And that is a major distinction. And I'm in favor of being able to require it, given the conditions on the land.
When you say current language, you mean Kosaki's?
No, our current
okay.
language.
Okay, thank you.
Doesn't require it.
Right. So
leaves it up to the applicant, and that's a major difference, and I'm in favor of being able to prescribe it.
Right.
I agree with that.
So that's one thing that could be considered, is leaving it as the planning board may require it based
But I'm
on
saying
site.
that's not how it is now.
No,
That would
I
be
hear
changed.
that. So
Okay.
one option, one change could be, and I'm hoping, I'm gonna try, I don't know if I can take notes, but we have the recording. But one change could be that the planning board may require it based on site conditions.
Yeah.
Okay. And then another option that it was suggested is that we could change a major subdivision to definition to a 3 or 4, if you wanted to do that. Yeah. Okay, I see one thumb down. But
The problem is, at the moment, we're saying a major subdivision must be.
Right.
I think having it be a decision by the planning board based on conditions for those smaller subdivisions makes more sense.
I
I'm
agree.
in favor of it being mandatory for 5 or more.
Yeah,
I'm in favor of that as well.
me too.
Okay,
Yeah,
That's
well,
they
that's
were
why
not
we're
looking at
having,
what we have now. That's what we have
Right.
now.
and that's
But
what we're
for
having this discussion. It's a
3 or
distinction.
4,
Right.
the 3 or 4, it should be at the discretion of the planning board.
Okay.
And based on site conditions.
Based on
Yes.
site conditions. And of course, the planning board always has to explain why. So
Right.
we're not going to set ourselves up to be sued unless, you never can prevent
Well,
that.
And so in that regard, then, what do you think about the idea of having the applicant come in with a conventional
Well,
yield plan and a conservation plan? Because
My
they're not going to
only-
lose, they're not going to lose density, right? They're not going to, this is density neutral.
all of it is density neutral, as I keep pointing out.
All conservation subdivisions are
Yeah,
density.
the only concern I have is whether it's going to add costs for the applicant if they have
It
to
will.
deal with a plan, with somebody doing the drawings for them.
But
It
it's
will
a,
add
Pre-sketch is just concept. So all they
that's
have
what we're
to do is
talking.
sort of draw on a map. They don't really
That's
have to hire a surveyor.
and that's the recommendation from Nan, is that it be part of a pre-sketch. So it is not a
So
formal
as long as it's part
plan.
of a pre-sketch, then I'm okay with there being both options being brought to the planning board. But if you're going to tell the applicant or the property owner to incur costs that could just be a what if, then I think that's unfair, frankly.
But if they come in and they say, this is kind of what we were thinking about doing, and draw it on a map,
Right.
and this is the other way to do it, and draw it on a map, that's
Right.
something that somebody with
And
I
you know,
think we could solve-
honestly, if you look at Parcel Viewer and you look at the layers on Parcel Viewer, even a very basic level, you can get a sense of what's on, you know, if there are wetlands, if they're this or that, you can get a sense of what's on a piece of property, on a parcel. So if
Right.
someone's coming in with a back of the envelope or a sketch, literally, and saying what they're thinking, what it does do is it engages the applicant and the planning board in a conversation about what's important about that property.
And of course,
And-
I'm with the maps. So if I
Right.
didn't happen to notice the wetlands,
Right,
'cause
exactly.
the smaller ones that are Hudsonia identified are not on the parcel viewer.
Well, we have those in the town.
Yeah, we do, and the county has them, but for some technical reason, they were not able to put them up. I sent them that information.
Right, we do reference them in the code, Kirk.
I have a suggestion. I think that if we have, I'm not sure if we have, but I think that if we've narrowed down sort of our overall, our general premise of how we would want this adjustment, this revision to be made, then I propose that we give this to Nan at this point and let her write up rather than us spending it, because we don't really have anything seriously formulated here. And if we've just determined two major things, and if we then make a motion to forward this over to Nan, and then we can then review it in detail when she writes it when she revises it. Yes?
Well, I have a revision of that suggestion, which is we're not coming up with code language today, but we are coming up with the intent and the direction.
Yeah,
She
that's what I
needs that.
That's what I was trying to.
She needs that. We are really have a compressed time frame to finish this. And so if what we can agree to is and maybe we should put this in the form of a proposal, that this idea of having the 15 acre or more based on subdivisions for 3 or 4 lot minor subdivision would be required in a pre-sketch plan meeting to come in with a conventional yield plan and a conservation yield plan. And that would be the basis for the conversation with the planning board to help to figure out what is needed on that site. And then the planning board, the other piece of that is to say the planning board may require a conservation subdivision based on those conditions and that discussion.
Laura, did you capture that?
I did.
Okay.
Okay.
What I propose is that Laura, if you could provide that to Deborah and I, we could then forward it over to Nan, and Deborah, what you just did was what I was proposing is
Right.
articulate the intent of our of what we're seeking to change, and then now give this over to Nan so that she can really complete the language around this and give us back a version that we could review.
Exactly. That will actually be in the code.
Yeah, I'm gonna read back what I wrote.
Okay.
Applicant to provide pre-sketch with a conventional yield plan and a conservation yield plan. 1. Number 2, planning board may require conservation subdivision for 3 to 4 lot subdivision based on site conditions, for example, 15 acres or more.
Well, I would say for a parcel of 15 acres or more. So if we're looking at less than 15 acres, it's not worth it for the applicant or the planning board.
Right.
Okay, so these two things are 15 acres or more.
Correct.
Yes, both of them are. And so I'm going to make a motion that we accept the language that was just written in draft as the intent of what we're trying to communicate to Nan. And there's that. And we can then forward it over to Nan for her to provide the specifics of the language. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have unanimous on this measure.
Great.
And that
Thank
way
you.
we've accomplished what we were seeking to accomplish today, and that is to move this over to Nan so that she could.
I will let Peter know and thank him for his input.
Absolutely.
No, that would be great. That will be wonderful news for Peter, for him to hear.
Okay, so the next non-housing committee issue, and I appreciate your forbearance on this, but I'll explain it. Which has come up, and I don't know, Laura, if you or Kirk, if you've had a chance to look over the very long document now, which will be, you know, straightened out, neatened up and everything like that with the response to comments. But we had comments from the ZBA relating to co-housing developments. And we didn't do anything with them other than acknowledge that they were there. Oh, I see Jeff is coming in. Good.
Yes.
Great, this is good timing. The issue, and so I went back into the code to look at what we say about co-housing. And there are a lot of really good things we say about it. Co-housing, by the way, I think came to us because it's where, you know, many of us know about Cantine Island in Saugerties or Ithaca's Eco Village as two examples of very successful co-housing developments where people live and they have sort of congregate space and maybe community gardens or things like that. So in our draft code, we are, so I'm just going to read the definition, and then I'm going to say a couple of things that are in the draft code, and then one thing that we're proposing based on the comments that we received that we eliminate. So the definition is residential uses, co-housing, residential uses on one or more lots intentionally designed with common spaces surrounded by private homes, and where such common spaces can include a structure with a kitchen, dining room, laundry, recreational areas, as well as open space gardens and parking shared by the residents. Common property is managed and maintained by community members. So that's our definition. That's in our draft code. And just hang a second here. And when you get to the section, and this is in the multi-family housing, I believe, and co-housing, it's in one, I don't have the exact, don't know where it is in the code, I'm sorry. It's the co-housing development section under in the housing chapter. So co-housing development shall be allowed only pursuant to all regulations and procedures as per the floating residential district. So it's already very limited. And that it permits a variety of housing types from single family, 2-family, 3- and 4-plex dwellings, multifamily, which is up to 8, and structures for common facilities such as recreation, meeting, dining, kitchen, laundry. And then all common structures are to be used primarily by the residents of the dwellings located within the co-housing development. So this is not, you know, something that then becomes, you know, you're not going to have a restaurant, you're not going to, you know, whatever. So, you know, some of you, and I think Laura, you're familiar with condos where you have community space or shared space that condo owners use sometimes. Maybe there's a pool table there or something like that. So that's not uncommon, but this is in the context of co-housing. There are other pieces of it which basically it's limited to 60 units, just like an FRD with town water and sewer, or 40 units when it's not located in such a district, and that no individual structure have more than 8 units. Okay, and it has some parking limitations and flexibility. The one piece which has come up for a possible change would be, where is it? Shoot. Would be non-residential uses, such as preschool or religious uses. And this was put in there. I don't think was really anything we particularly focused on. It just came out of a more generic description of co-housing developments, but it's not something that we were particularly seeking. And the comment was expressed concerns about having these types of uses in a co-housing development, that they really would not reflect Woodstock and our intent in terms of having the community such as this developed. So I think the proposal is that, and I'm going to propose it, is that we remove that those uses from the co-housing development. Everything else
being prohibit.
Right. We remove those uses which are currently in the draft code. We could even go a step further and say we prohibit them, but at the very least, we don't permit them. They're not permitted.
So when you say, what are you asking? What are you stating you want to remove?
Okay. I want to remove these non-housing uses such as preschool or religious uses that are in our draft code from the co-housing section.
So we just want to remove, sounds to me that the way I remember this code is that those are permitted explicitly. We want to remove them from the explicit list of what's permitted.
Correct.
They will not be permitted because they're not part of anything else that's permitted.
Correct.
So if they're removed from it being explicitly permitted, they will not be permitted. And I think that's what we're trying to get to on this. And
Right.
specifically the religious or the church essentially and the daycare.
Right.
Why the daycare?
Two reasons. One is it's really hard to get a daycare going to begin with.
Right.
If you know the daycare laws, it's almost impossible.
Right.
And it just doesn't necessarily make sense for that. The church is a more obvious one, I think. I think there's some concern that if you look at Sullivan County, there are areas being taken over.
Right.
Literally the government's being taken over by a religious group. It's just that way.
Right. And I want just speaking to a preschool or daycare. We have preschools and daycares in our town. So this, and some people do homeschooling and that's what they do and they make arrangements or whatever. But these are institutions within a housing development. And so what we're saying is the housing development is for things related to the housing and not related to other activities that are not part of that.
So, Deborah, if you could state specifically that we're not removing, we are removing from.
We're removing that provision that's in the draft code. We're making a revision. We're recommending a revision to the draft code to remove that provision that allows for these non-housing uses.
It's not the whole provision, Deborah.
Okay, sorry. It's a portion of that provision. I'm going to look it up now.
It's a list of specifics of how the properties could be used. Is that right? What you're saying, Jeff?
It's a list of exceptions to what can be used, and that list includes, I think, 4 or 5 things. It includes community center. It includes community gathering centers. It includes daycare, and it includes church, among other things. So we just want to remove
those 2 things.
in church, not everything else.
Okay, just clarify. So you're only talking about removing those things from being able to be done in the common space.
Right.
So if somebody has a unit and they want to homeschool their own kids in their own space, they can do it in their own space.
That's not an issue.
Homeschooling is not daycare.
Yeah,
Right, okay.
Okay.
But,
I'm
but,
gonna-
we're saying that but we're just restricting what can be done in the common area, but are we also restricting what you can do in your own space? Like I can't do daycare then, if I have a
Correct.
co-housing, I can't do daycare in my unit either.
right.
You
Okay.
probably couldn't legally to begin with.
You couldn't legally because there are requirements
Restrictions, yeah.
now
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
Make it-
All of those
Articulate,
daycares,
can we articulate?
all those
the motion?
daycares over in houses became illegal 5 years ago, 10 years, 15 years ago.
So,
So can I found the provision, Kirk, and I would like to just, so we could note it for the record. It's under B co-housing developments, which is in the section of multifamily dwellings and co-housing developments, 260-90. Okay, and under co-housing developments, which is under B, and this is where it describes the FRD requirements. And under number 3, it says other private or public uses that may be approved within the co-housing development include a church or other places of worship, private school, daycare center, nursery school, and then it says park or playground, garden, nursery, or farm, roadside stand or farm market to display and sell farm or other products made on site. Solar collectors may be allowed by the town of Woodstock. Home occupations could be allowed. And then it also talks about commercial kitchens, which I think, again, we're not interested in having a commercial kitchen in a housing development. That's a different type of use.
Not necessarily. I'm gonna
Okay,
talk about that. My wife's best friend has a commercial kitchen in her house on, and she does commercial bakery.
okay,
So I don't think that's necessarily a problem.
Well,
okay.
I guess, oh, sorry for jumping in, but for co-housing though, and I got my book, I printed the whole thing out, I'm looking for it so I can read what we're doing. But, yeah, I know Jeff says he has to leave for a bit. But I guess my thought or concern is if we have co-housing, everybody's kind of smacked together, the focus, and my thought ought to be housing, not for people to be able to do all these extra things that are probably going to disturb their neighbors.
yeah, well,
Well-
I think that's true. And then when I heard the list, Deborah, that you just listed, it sounded like there were 3, not just 2. One was daycare, the other was a school, and the third was religion.
I'm gonna get this document up so we can look at it, okay? So just bear with me for a minute, please.
So while you do that, I did put in the chat, and I'm going to press enter in the chat.
Oh.
I put the wording for what we agreed on before, just in case Judy and Kirk want to read it while Deborah looks, and just make sure I worded it the way you thought. And then
Okay,
this is what I'll send to Deborah.
I'm looking.
okay.
Well, but it's also a 3 lots.
3 to 4,
Subdivision application into 3 lots.
3 to
For
4.
subdivision- Oh,
Three
for
or
the,
four.
okay, for parcel, okay, thank you.
15 acre or more into
Thank
3
you.
or 4 lots.
For subdivision application into 2, 3, or 4 lots. Okay.
And you might want to say minor
For a
for minor
minor,
subdivision so that it's
Okay, thank
clear
you.
that that's what this is.
Okay,
okay.
now
I'm
I
typing,
think I can get it.
yeah, I'm typing it here and then I'm
Rest is
gonna,
good. The rest is good.
yeah, okay. I'm got, there we go, hang on a sec, all right. There
Thank
we
you.
go. Sure.
Okay,
I'm gonna pop it in again.
and now I'm gonna share my screen when you're ready.
All right,
sure.
go for it.
Okay,
Yeah, she'll untangle the wording, but yes,
The word is too tangled.
a little bit tangled, but not worth
Okay.
worrying about now.
Co-housing development.
so this is not the whole section, but the number 3 is the one that we're discussing.
So we'd be taking out from church through nursery school, right?
Yeah.
But then park or playground, garden, nursery, or farm, but not commercial, right?
Yeah,
Well,
could you, Deborah, could you just highlight what we're taking out? If
Yeah.
you could.
Yeah, that's exactly. Okay, so not a church,
All the way
Not
down to the school.
daycare. And that's gonna be highlighted.
Oh, yeah, why don't,
Nursery school too. Nursery school
Okay.
too.
Thank you. Okay. I mean, so now we're looking at, and Jeff had some comments. It looks like he's gone.
yeah, but it's weird, but see, I'm still tripping up over the farm thing. Because if you have co-housing, which means you're smacking a lot of people in a small space, and one person has a farm, so everybody's got to deal with this one person's roadside stand blocking up the,
Yeah,
parking
I have a
lot or
problem
whatever.
as a farm policy person, as an ag policy person, I have a problem with that. I don't think it's appropriate for housing development. That's
A garden is fine. But
Garden is
nursery,
one
farm,
thing.
roadside stand, those are really fairly major.
And
Yeah,
frankly, if somebody wants to sell products that they make in their home and that's permissible, is what Jeff was saying, they still don't have to have a roadside stand or be selling them from this place. This is still a place where people live. It's predominantly a place where people live.
I guess I'm just going to say this. I was a landlord in Woodstock. I'm still a landlord in Kingston, by the way. But in any event, in Woodstock, I got to tell you, one of my rules was no drug dealers in my building. Because I'll tell you, when people deal drugs, there's a steady stream of traffic. They call it drug trafficking for a reason. People drive up, they pop out of their car, they run in the building, they come back out. I always evicted drug dealers. To make a long story short, I always said, don't bother moving in, you're going to get evicted. And they moved in anyway, and they got evicted. But the point being, I'm not really happy with anybody in co-housing selling anything on the property. Because if you let them sell this, then they'll say, well, I'm not selling drugs, I'm just selling zucchini. I don't know. So I'm skittish about, if you have a co-housing development, which is a lot of people crammed into a small space, I'm skittish about having any sales of anything on the property.
I think this covers it because it says no retail establishment, restaurant. Those would allow somebody to have a bakery in their kitchen, but they couldn't sell on the property.
Right.
Well, so that's okay. And if that's the clarification, like you can have a garden, but I guess a farm is different from a garden because a farm is intended to be making.
Absolutely different.
Yeah, okay. So I'm okay with the park and the playground and the garden. And I do like and I'm just kind of reading, right, no retail establishment, right.
I have a motion. I have a motion that we vote to remove the items that have been highlighted by Deborah and to then forward this information over to Nan and have her rewrite number 3 to have these be eliminated.
Yeah, I got a question before we do that. So I'm looking at the artisanal food production facilities, including a commercial kitchen. So we might allow somebody to have, but the private or public, so are we clarifying that could be a private use, but not a public use, because this begins saying private or public uses may be approved. So we're saying that in a private space, somebody can do food production, but not in the public space. They can't like take up the kitchen that other people want to use with their own food production.
That's what I think.
Well, if we rewrote it in a way that it was clear that artisanal food production, like artist studio, is a home occupation. We've got the retail clause, which means that you can't sell it there and you can't have a restaurant there.
Right.
I'm thinking of Cuba with the Paladares.
But if somebody can be making food that they're going to sell someplace else, they can be tying up the whole kitchen so that nobody else can use it. And I have an issue with that because we're saying everybody's going to share a kitchen. Oh, you can't use
in their home. We need to make it clear. That's why I'm saying if these are subcategories of home occupation.
Right, but I'm looking at the first, 3 begins by saying other private or public uses. I'm okay if we separate it and say private uses may include this, public uses may include a few, fewer things.
Park,
So it's the
playground, and garden, and
Yeah, so-
community meeting space.
Yeah, so the community, I think we should be clear what public uses could be, and then be clear about in private. If you want to bake like heck out of an oven you have in your own thing, fine. But I don't want somebody in there taking the public kitchen, the public stove, and monopolizing it so nobody else can use it.
Okay,
If we put private in front of artisanal food production, I don't, I mean, if somebody had a co-housing and they wanted to have a cooperative studio,
mm-hmm,
I would love that idea. I mean, I've thought about
Yeah.
that in terms of my own equipment, that if I knew, if I were to build my ADU and the person was an artist and we wanted to share my studio space, that's the kind of thing that makes sense in Woodstock in a
Sure does.
co-housing.
so how does that work with commercial kitchen production, preparation, and
That's the
storage of food
question.
for sale?
Question.
But again,
so-
the commercial kitchen would be in the private residence. It would not be in the common space.
So that needs to be clarified then.
Well, that's what I mean, and you might want to make
Yeah.
a number 4. You might want to make
Private
number 3.
artisanal food production facilities.
So one thing about co-housing is that the common space is dictated by the people who live in the common space, live in the
Right.
co-housing. So
Right.
it's not like one person could say, I'm moving into the common space and using it.
That's
It-
true.
So there's a process, if you will, of governance. There's a governance that takes place in co-housing that is not just one person, doing what they want in the common space. That doesn't.
So commercial kitchen is not for private use. So basically, we're saying things that are common space are not for private use, unless what? There's some agreement, you're gonna have a gallery in your,
Well, the
a
common
gallery?
space, of course, is for private use because I don't have a kitchen in my unit. I'm using the kitchen in the common space. So common space ought to be for non-commercial purposes. So the public space can only be used for non-commercial purposes. So
Okay.
maybe we put it that way. So I'm okay if we say the public space is only used for non-commercial purposes. And if you want to be cooking and baking stuff that you're going to sell down the street, you can do that in your private space. But I think maybe you want to make a number 4 and make number 3, here's the rule for public uses, and add a number 4 that says, oh, in private, you can do this or that. Because I just want to make sure it's clear that in public uses,
Yeah.
I
On
think
point.
again, we're running into trouble with artist studios. Because if you had 3 or 4, if you had a bunch of artists who wanted to do a co-housing and they made their living as artists, but they wanted to have a common studio,
right,
I wouldn't see a problem with that.
I wouldn't either. And there's going to be some developments in our town that there will be non-residential buildings that would be deemed for use as artist studios by those people who live in that area. So that's a very realistic possibility. What
I
Judith is,
suppose it's true for artisanal food production too. The issue is an individual can't take over the common space. That's really the issue, right?
that's what that, and that's again part of the governance of a co-housing. It's not dictated by the town.
So
Ultimately,
here,
housing is private property. It's private property of the people who live there.
Right.
So
And-
maybe the thing to do is not highlight that orange thing, leave that in, take the word private out, but specify that common spaces must be approved. The use of common spaces for any of these approved uses must be by agreement of the residents and the co-housing. Something like that.
which is
well, and
bylaw.
I add the word all, because
okay, so
Yeah.
tell me if you want me to put any suggested language in here, I'm happy to do it. I did put this comment in that the public space is used for non-commercial purposes. Artist studios should be permitted.
No, I
in-
think you can't
No.
say that because artists are often
Okay,
making
okay,
their living that way.
okay.
So I think we ought to take private out of the artisanal food production facilities. Leave that
Okay.
as a general statement. Take that out. Take that back out. Wasn't in
Got
there.
it.
And then
Okay,
add the clause, common use of common spaces, permitted uses of common spaces must be by agreement of the residents.
okay, and Nan can work on this,
Yeah.
Yeah,
right? This is-
I do think it's gonna be important to clarify, is the permitted use by agreement of a majority of the residents, or will
Yeah.
it be like all the residents? Should it be all the
It
residents?
should be a majority of the residents.
So if I'm not an artist, I moved in, I'm not an artist, and 2 years from now, the artists get together and say, we're gonna take up the whole common space doing our stuff, and I'm the only one saying no, I get steamrolled over because I might have been there first. But if it's a majority, then I might rather say all, because if it's all, then the agreement, yeah, then before you move in, you'd know, hey, this is an artist space. So
now we're dictating what the governance will be in that
I-
particular site, and I think that's way
Right.
outside of our
I
space.
agree with Kirk on that. I
Well,
think we can't,
And
so maybe-
the common thing with co-housing is consensus.
yeah,
right,
That's the language, that's the approach to a lot of these decision-making processes, that there's a consensus. And consensus doesn't mean unanimous. It means that there's a general consensus.
That's a hard line to draw, speaking as a former Quaker.
Right. No, I
It
understand.
tends
My
to
point
me,
is
it tends
that-
to devolve into being unanimous.
Right, but my point is that it's not up to the housing code to
Mhm,
dictate
right.
how people govern the properties of which they are private owners of. It's only land use. We're not talking about this. We're
Right.
getting to behavior and
thank you.
culture.
Okay.
So-
Okay, what if we say something like this, and again, this is not, set in stone, but permitted use of common space must be by agreement of the residents according to governance of the co-housing community, or something
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, that's
I
great.
add the
That's
word
excellent.
established. If you could say the governance established, or established for, or established by the cohabiting, yeah. I would
okay,
add the word established there, and then either the word for or by, I think would follow it.
Yeah, by is good, because that
Okay.
means that they have to think about it.
so we're not telling them, they set up their governance, but that they have to make that decision.
Excellent. Okay, so
Good.
Okay.
based on what we have here on the screen,
Well,
The most-
sorry, can we have Deborah, can you do a strike through of all the yellow? Because we
Yeah.
know that the purpose of the
Oh.
yellow is to strike through.
Right.
Okay. Let me take the yellow out first, sorry. Oh, my God,
Well, the yellow
Right.
can stay. I don't care if the yellow stays there.
you don't care if the yellow stays,
I
okay,
don't care. Yeah, if you can find strike through, but you may have to.
all right, I can do it. Okay, and then this,
Okay. And I just want to reread, I know Kirk wants us to vote, I just want to reread. So public or private, we are allowing parks, playgrounds, gardens, solar collectors, artist studios, and we are allowing artisanal food production facilities in the public spaces.
In theory.
Yeah, and we're saying permitted use must be by agreement of the residents. So even though we're saying that all these things could be done, the residents have to agree first.
Well, let's make a point here. This clause is not limited to common spaces, except for what we just added at the bottom. It's also what can be allowed
Right.
in a person's home.
right,
Right, okay, right, okay. Okay,
I mean, again, this gets back to intent. It was not our intention to have, any and all things happen in co-housing. We're trying to do a structure that would, and potentially, because it's follows the FRD, there might, have some affordable, there could be other things that kick in here that are part of the, as Kirk said, the land use code, which is what we're trying to focus on.
so why is the word artisanal important?
Because it means that somebody is doing small quantities
Small quantity.
that
Oh,
are
okay.
special kinds of food. It's not like a
High
factory.
production.
It's not a
So-
factory.
So if I look at artisanal, I will find small quantities.
Yes,
Okay.
Good question.
It's-
Good
it's,
question. but I think so.
it's
It implies handwork.
It implies
Right.
what?
Handwork.
Oh,
factory, not
It's like
production.
an artist studio. You're cooking. You may very well sell the product, but it's not a factory.
Or cheese, you know. So,
Okay.
I would like someone to make a motion on this so we can, second it and vote on it. Can
I
someone,
move we approve this change as indicated in this markup.
I second it. All in favor?
I
Okay.
Yeah. saying aye, but I am looking up artisanal.
Okay.
Deb,
So,
is it yes?
pardon?
By hand, okay,
I'm a
made by
yes.
hand in limited quantity, so I'm happy with your, I've looked and I'm happy.
Okay, good.
So Deborah,
Okay.
what else is on your agenda?
Okay, so, yeah, and again, I apologize. So we have the housing committee comments, which are extensive. And we do have to make some decisions associated with them. And then we have affordable housing definitions, which are not finalized. And for that last piece, Nan is set to go to work on it. Kai Lord Farmer from the County Planning Department took a stab at taking the town of Lloyd affordable housing information and he just sent this yesterday at after 5 o'clock or right at 5 o'clock to put it into our draft code. I'm not comfortable. I don't think we're ready to, just for the first time, myself included, to look at these documents and make decisions about them. But he has offered to join us to have a conversation about affordable housing definitions, if that's useful. Alternatively, we will have a session with Nan this week and work out the details. She has these documents, so she's looking at them, and come back with some language that we can all look at next week. So,
I opt for the last alternative, that we allow, and we trust Nan, along with the support of, Kai Lord Farmer, and, to make revisions to the definitions and language of affordable housing in our code. And then we, the committee, the task force, would review those changes when we have it back from her at the end of this month, in the middle of September.
well, it would be, actually, we get them back hopefully from her next week.
Yeah.
So, because we're meeting on the
Have a
5th.
review.
And that,
So then we'll,
so-
for review at future time and approval at
Right.
a future time.
so the
So
goal
that's
would be
what
to have them.
that's what I propose on the affordable housing language change, revisions.
Yeah.
Is that we, again, just to reiterate, we forward this over to Nan, and along with the, examples of the town of Lloyd, and
Kai's input.
Lord Farmers, additions, that Nan provide us with revisions to the affordable housing definitions and language used in the code, and we will review at a later date.
And can I just say one thing, Kirk? Actually, the goal is to make our definitions that we currently have in the draft code reflect some of the comments from the housing committee, that they didn't feel that they were as consistent and accurate as they needed to be. But I wanted to say, for the record, having spoken with multiple housing organizations, the county, municipalities, and consultants, that there is no definitive thing, except that we can point out what is required by federal and state law. So there's certain things we can put in there that we know are absolute, that are not things that we are trying to achieve, because we're trying to expand the universe of affordable housing to include middle income housing that is not high end, that is not subsidized, but that creates this other opportunity. And that's what Nan is going to focus on. And that's what Kai was focusing on in the town of Lloyd. And I'm happy to send it to all of you, and you can see what he's done. So that I just wanted to fill in that information.
I have a question. The only thing in what you said that I'm not sure about and maybe a little concerned about is that we not duplicate the federal and state language, because that could change.
Well, no, it always says whatever is in effect. It doesn't.
All right.
So it has to be what is in effect at the time that it's being applied. So it's those statutes that are in effect at the time it's being applied.
And that'll be in the law. So
that will be in the
there
law.
won't be things in there that at the moment are in the law but might change.
Correct.
Okay. I'm good.
So
Can I, let's change the subject. Can I send you a definition of artisanal that I found in Google that we can add to the definition so people don't get confused about what we mean by
yeah,
artisanal?
sure.
Okay, I will send you an artisanal food definition.
Where are you sending it to?
To you.
Oh, to an email? Okay.
I sent to your email. Yeah, I'll send it. I've Googled and I'll send it. And it does say, by hand, limited quantities. And it also talks about no colorants, preservatives, whatever, so it's a nice definition that I would be comfortable saying people could use the common space to do.
Okay.
Subject to the agreement of the community.
Okay.
Of the committee? Well, sure.
Subject to the agreement of the community.
Of the community.
Oh,
If
correct.
it is out of their private space.
Yes,
Again,
correct.
you can,
Correct.
these are also things you can do in your home.
Sure.
Even if you're not allowed to do them in the common space, you can do them in your home.
Okay.
And it
Right.
says private or public right there in the language.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So we'll just note that to add definition artisanal.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So
You can take this down, Deborah.
okay, thank you. Okay. So, I want to say one other thing, and I don't mean to monopolize the floor, but I just want you to know that this is very complicated to get everybody's individual small comments, as we did from the Housing Committee, and sort through them and understand them and come up with good responses to them that are respectful of the effort that they put in thinking through what we've proposed. So we have really made an effort to accomplish that. And I just lost you. There you are. In the way we've begun to respond to the comments from the Housing Committee. They were very fastidious about some of the language and wording issues that I think we are able to just incorporate. But some of the wording issues really do change the meaning of what we're trying to do, or they occur in parts of the code that it's redundant to have them. It's not the right place to have them. So from the planning board's perspective, you may not need to have everything repeated in multiple sections of the code. If you have it in one place and it's clear that that has to apply in a subdivision or in an approval process, that's sufficient. But there are a few things that they brought up that I think we should look at. while we're together. And the only way I could see doing this was actually putting the housing committee comments up on the screen, which is that it starts on page 32 of our draft code. So, I mean, if you can get it up on your computer, that would be great. If you can't, then I'll see if it makes sense to put it up on the screen.
Sorry,
So
which one?
we're gonna go through it now?
Well, we're going to get through some of them. We're going to
Okay.
get through, we're not going to get through everything.
So
And we're
let's-
not going to go, and we're not going to look at the affordability section because that we're going to look at separately.
Can you put a
So-
link in the chat so that I
Yeah,
know where to go?
please.
Yes. Okay. Let me copy. Chat. So, okay, so in putting things to the chat, is that, where does that go? Does that go to is that part of the, because this is a working document. We're not.
Oh, so you don't want to put it in the chat because if people went back to the recording, you're afraid that they would get it?
Well, it's not afraid, it's just not the right point in time. We're just in a very, this is a very rough set of comments.
So would you just, well, people will see it if you share it on your screen, they'll still see it,
Right.
so
Well,
I'm
I'm
not
good.
sure.
Okay, so I'm gonna suggest that I send,
You can email it and I'll pull it.
I'll
from an
email it. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay,
Does this recording get put up on the town?
apparently, yes.
Okay. Now that these are open meetings, I guess that's the distinction.
Right, which apparently is a voluntary thing, that these are open meetings.
Yeah.
We're not doing open meetings, we are doing public meetings. Because open meetings is much more than what we're doing.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Just to be accurate with that,
Other public meetings, not open meetings. Okay.
yes.
Deborah, are you sending this to my Woodstock address?
Yes, do you want that? Is that where
That's
you want
fine. I just need to get up on that email so that I get it.
it?
Tell us when you send it so we know to look.
Okay. Okay, I just sent it to everybody.
Okay. It's got to bounce off this. It's got to bounce off the satellite.
Technology, okay,
I got it.
good, thank you.
I'm opening the document.
What I did to make it,
Oh,
okay,
Page-
so
page
I'm on
32.
page 32.
Just a minute.
And I'm going to explain to you what the colors are and how we're looking at what the topics are.
I gotta
Okay,
get
I'm
there.
Let me know when you're there.
All right. It looks like I am. I'm seeing red.
Okay.
Subdivision regulations. Wait a minute now. What page am I on here?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's how it starts. It could start page 32.
Subdivision
It's
regulations.
housing committee comments, which are all below in multiple pages, about 15 pages. And
Got it.
they started with subdivision regulations.
Would have been
And-
nice if they had collated them, wouldn't it?
Well, they didn't. So,
They did.
right. Which is why it's been a bit of a, it's been a bit of a slog, but they all weighed in on it, and that was great because they each come at from, and they did discuss it. And just by full disclosure, I'm on the housing committee. I did not participate in the discussions, and I didn't prepare their comments, and I didn't review their comments before they came to us. So I recused myself from that discussion. So the first one, so I put these topics on. This first one relates to enforcement, the enforcement section in the subdivision code. And they want to, we didn't revise this section. So, but they're trying to strengthen the language in the code, where in some instances, I think it's fine, in other instances, maybe not, where giving direction to the code enforcement officer, saying you have to take action if there is a violation, versus you may, that, in other words, the discretion. So it's a much, it's the difference of shall versus may. Is it worth reading? Do you want me to read it?
Well, I'm looking at it, so I'm reading it.
Okay.
Well, it's yeah, I mean, there's a perfect world and then there's the real world. In the perfect world, that would be shall. In the real world, the code enforcement officer has a lot of stuff they're juggling, and they probably want the option of proceeding or not as they see fit based on what's going on.
Well, it says any appropriate, so it still,
Well,
there is some judgment still left, but
right.
I'm not sure. I think it's a distinction without a difference.
I'm okay leaving it may. I don't care if it's
Okay.
shall.
Okay.
personally.
There should be a vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kirk is
I-
right to vote.
Yeah, I agree. Shall we vote to retain the current language of may versus shall?
I second that.
I vote yes.
I vote yes.
Me too.
I'm waving my hand, yes, also, sorry.
I like.
That was unanimous.
Okay, okay.
And if you want to say why,
Yeah,
there's
Yes,
still
can we-
a judgment, there's still a judgment required as to whether to institute proceedings.
okay, sorry for my spelling. Okay, good. Whoops. Okay, the next one, okay, there's a couple of things where they're looking at, again, this is not something we focused on or we revised, but they're looking at current language having to do with penalties and where the money goes. And I did check with the town, and Laura, you may know this already, but penalties are paid to the town and go to the general fund unless they're otherwise designated.
Yeah, this is a policy thing. It's not code.
Yep.
Okay. So then it goes under policy.
It's town policy. They can change
Right.
it. Write it in
Right.
code. It'd be out of order because they would have to change the law in order to change the policy. So,
Okay, so basically it's in the code though. And it's in a subdivision code, so but it is up to the town board. This is the town board.
Yep.
It's not our job. Okay,
exactly.
okay, okay, so I'm gonna do that here, same as above. Okay,
It's for number 3, so for number 3, you're doing the same thing.
okay,
Yep.
Oh.
Yep.
yep, okay, same as above.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and this is another one, which,
What's this? What's this? Where are you?
I'm sorry, I'm up to
C.
C.
Yeah.
I'm in this
Is
again,
there-
this is a, pardon?
Is there a problem displaying the comments from
Well,
Yeah,
I don't have a
That's-
problem, but
Jeff,
It's a lot easier.
Deborah sent us an email with a link so I can see what she's doing. I can even see her updates as she
I'm
does it. So
seeing
check.
it.
I'm,
Okay,
you know,
fine.
if you want me to share a screen,
No,
I'll
it's
share. a
fine.
screen.
I don't need to. I can go to the shared doc.
Okay, because this is what we did before.
Okay.
We're on page 33, item, it's C, administrative remedies.
So Deborah,
Yeah.
just for the clarity, you're gonna do
Yeah.
this in linear fashion. You're not earmarking the ones we really can make decisions on.
No, I'm gonna jump over a bunch of them. I just wanted,
All
all right,
right.
I see, in the interest of time, okay, I will just tell you, I have been working on this a lot. And I did put categories, but I did not get to the point where I said, I made a decision. We're gonna focus on this and not on that. I'm gonna try to get to the substance. We're gonna setting the affordability issues aside, and we can try and get through these as quickly as possible. If it doesn't look, what's the word? In legalese, if it's de minimis, we can skip to the next one. How's that? Does that work? People comfortable with that? Okay, making that judgment. I do wanted to get to this one though, because I feel in the may versus shall thing, and again, I would kind of look to if somebody violates a permit, and or someone involved, a developer, it says the town may withhold or deny a building permit to a subsequent grantee, owner, etc. If there's been a violation and somebody subsequently takes the permit and said, oh, there's a permit, I can do it, even though they violated, you know, is that okay? And is that something that the planning board should, again, it's at the discretion of the code enforcement officer, or is it something the planning board should direct?
I'm okay with the recommendation, the HOTF response. I see they're changing may to shall, because if there's a violation, just because you have a new owner, it's still a violation. So
That was my point.
That
was my
makes
point.
sense. Makes sense to me.
Okay, so that was the point of my recommendation. Okay.
Yep.
So
Okay.
is there a vote here then?
Yes,
What's the
Okay.
vote?
Okay, so to vote is to change the may to shall in this
Okay,
section of
everybody,
administrative remedy.
there's a motion to change may to shall. Is there a second?
agreed.
And so we have full agreement here?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, my
Okay.
hand's up.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Okay,
Next.
now I'm actually gonna skip down.
Yeah, through the proofreading.
Yeah, I mean, this is where it gets into the checklist and putting on page 36. And
So you're down at 36 now?
yeah, I'm at page 36.
And which
Okay.
item are you on in 36?
Item A, preliminary site plan checklist.
Okay, I'm stepping away, but I'm listening. I'll be back in like 20 seconds.
Okay, so they're asking us to add a few more things to the checklist to identify specific types of housing and their use in terms of what is provided to the planning board by the applicant. I think I think there's generic enough. This is a generic checklist. If there are things in the checklist that say things like intended use and energy systems, there's nothing wrong with having that provided, but I think that, again, this may be, or shall be appropriate, but not limited to, which is something else that's in the planning board review, this preliminary site plan, and the next item. My comment here was to discuss with you all and confer with Nan just generally, do we need to add language such as that suggested by the housing committee? Or can we add intent? And also, I think we can't add any intention for future ADU unless it's part of an application. So I think that my view is that this is something that this checklist should be reviewed by the planning board to see if it meets their needs for reviewing these applications.
Absolutely. I don't think it should be in a mandated list at this point.
Okay. So my recommendation is that we don't act on this comment to change anything, but basically saying this is the purview of the planning board.
Does everybody agree with that?
Yes.
So we're changing the wording in the law. Oh,
No.
I'm sorry, I'm at the wrong one. I was on 77. You're up higher.
So the motion is to not agree or not. What's the motion, Deborah?
So the motion is that we, that this is not, this is, first of all, it's outside our scope, but it is in the purview of the planning board as to what goes into their
Okay. So
checklist.
that's the way we should frame it then. Does everybody agree that the motion right now, again, Deborah motioned it, I second what the second is that this is outside of the purview of this task force, and it is in the purview or up to the planning board to dictate what this list is and what's on this list. Is that an accurate statement?
Agreed.
Okay, so
But I have a question. So
Okay.
so this checklist, is the checklist in the law today, or the checklist is something that the planning board uses? It's not in the law.
Oh, gosh. There is a preliminary site plan checklist in the law. But
And so their suggestion is add a few more things, and we're saying don't add a few more things, and we're saying it's not housing anyway.
well, we're saying it's up to the planning board, really, what they need in the checklist. If it needs to be more specific, you know, I mean, one of the suggestions, again, I appreciate them going so carefully through this, but you know, for instance, if somebody intends to add an ADU in the future, they're suggesting they should indicate how many and what they'd be used for. We don't know, right? There's a lot of things that are really both outside of our scope. And I think, again, I think the discretion of the planning board at the time when an application comes in.
So are we also saying if we want to change the checklist, it's in the law, we ought to get that list from the planning board? We're not going to do it.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. That if the planning board
I'm not
asks us-
aware that the planning board has ever had a problem with the checklist. It's something
Okay.
that our administrator uses when an application comes in.
Right.
Okay, good.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna keep current language, keep current code. Because we
Basically,
didn't even,
we're not accepting this suggestion in this
Okay.
this document.
Okay.
That's essentially what it is. And the
Okay.
reason is that's outside of our purview, and the planning board owns this responsibility already.
okay,
It's up to them to add or change that list. It's an administrative element
right,
of the planning board, not a code element.
right. And that I think just generally, because there are a number of things that fall into that category, Kirk, and I think your characterization is correct. There are a number of administrative things where there were comments on that I don't really feel are you know,
Appropriate for us. Yeah.
that I think are difficult. People don't understand how all this works, and that some of it is administrative.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
moving on.
discussion, are we clear on what we're voting on right now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
we have clarity. So
And
those
I
in,
apologize for my, go ahead.
those in favor, both vocally and verbally, show favor that we're gonna not accept this comment in this document. We have a unanimous.
And we'll
Um,
come up with the right language for all of these that are administrative, and
Right.
we're just gonna leave in the purview of the planning board.
Okay, that's a unanimous, Deborah.
Okay,
Uh,
thank you.
What's the next item?
Okay,
77 is the same
6
thing, isn't
minutes
it?
left.
yep,
6
same. It's the same.
The next one's administrative also. So anything administrative, deemed administrative on this document, we should maybe just have a subgroup review it and determine that. And if it's
Okay,
deemed administrative, that we do a blanket review statement saying we're not going to engage in anything administrative associated with the management of the planning board.
so I think you made a very good point, Kirk, which is having the subgroup go through these and just making sure maybe we make a new category, administrative, because there are many of these comments that fall under that
Right.
But
category.
and not housing, it's administrative, not housing, it's not, it
Administrative.
doesn't relate to the housing, it doesn't
Right.
relate to the affordable housing goal.
Right.
Or code.
Or code.
Oh,
And there
you
may
go.
be things at some point that would be looked at by the zoning revision committee, but I don't, again, these don't fall into that category.
Well,
Okay.
I only have one question though, Deborah.
Yeah,
If they're currently in the code, like the checklist
Right.
is currently in the code, it's not inappropriate for them to suggest changes, but it gets into too nitpicky kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Right,
and I
they-
think that would be something that could be recommended to the administrator of the planning board from the housing committee, not through this committee, not through
Yeah.
this task force.
So the language in this next one that I think they highlighted shall include as appropriate but not limited, yes,
Where are you?
I'm sorry, I'm on 260-77, planning board review of preliminary site plan.
Yeah, I got it. Okay.
Okay, and that's where,
I got a whole bunch of them.
yeah, but the language is right, shall include as appropriate but not limited to. That's
Yep.
what you need, right? That works for the planning board?
Yep.
So that gives you the latitude and also to require certain things.
If we see, or if Melissa sees that there are things that keep coming up that ought to be on the checklist, then she will add them, or we will ask her to add.
Okay, great. And I did want to raise this next one just because Judith and I talked about a few comments have been made, some not given in writing, about complete streets and why we're not including complete streets in the zoning code. I think we've included the intent of complete streets and non-motorized facilities or aspects in the development of housing, FRDs, multifamily, all of those things. But the complete streets policy that was adopted by the town is for town actions, as I understand it, right? It's for
Yes,
sidewalks.
I would agree,
It's for road cuts, it's that kind of thing. So, you know, I think I found this sentence from this complete streets policy, which is private housing and commercial developments and related roadway design components may be subject to review by the complete streets committee. So that would be the only thing we might want to add, and we have to figure out if there's a place to put it. You know, like the civic design is the same thing. The planning board may ask the civic design commission to review something. They may ask, right? Isn't that how that
Let me
works?
suggest different wording.
Okay,
May be referred for review, because this is something where the planning board would refer. That's what we do with civic design. We don't
Okay.
have to take their recommendations. And maybe is a not shall be.
okay,
May be referred by the planning board to the complete streets committee for review.
may be referred by the planning board
I think that's how it works
to the Complete Streets Committee for review.
for review and recommendations.
For review and recommendation. Okay, great. Okay,
And we did put something in the major subdivision code, as I remember it, for walking paths
We we
and
absolutely did, right?
So-
And we can mention
it's
that
supposed to
also.
go somewhere.
And, right, okay,
So
So we-
typo review would be reviewed, right? Instead of reviewed.
oh. May be referred by the
Maybe-
planning board.
Maybe
to
referred
complete-
for review. You can make refer, yeah.
Well, we've got review and recommendation at the end, and that's the most comfortable place for it.
Okay,
Well, I'm just looking at what I see Deborah has on the thing. Private housing and commercial developments and related roadway design components may be reviewed by the Complete Streets Committee.
oh,
The
We
word review,
changed that already.
I took
well,
it out.
I'm not seeing it on my screen, sorry.
I don't know why.
Okay, I just refreshed, oops, geez.
Yeah,
Yes,
so,
We used to do
sometimes,
this
I-
also.
and this happened last time also, is Deborah was updating and I could see some things she updated, another thing she updated I never saw, so.
And that's
Okay.
weird. Because I'm
Yes, it
seeing
is.
it as she writes it.
So
Okay.
it's 11:30.
Right,
And I just want to point out a couple things about what's been transpiring today. Is that we are group editing again. And this is the late stage of this effort. I think it's an unwise thing to do to get into group editing. So I would either suggest that there be further review of this entire document, so that it's prepared like all the other comments were prepared.
can I speak to this when you're done, Kirk?
Yeah, and so that there be, so it would enable the task force to focus on what needs to be voted on and what needs to be recommended to Nan. And
Okay.
those categories only, and not allow the time that the task force is taking to get into group editing efforts, because this is a very poor use of our time. And I don't mean it out of criticism. I just mean this is that we've learned this in the past, and we are now just days away from trying to complete our efforts here. And so I think that in order to use our time effectively, there needs to be time spent outside of this meeting, and I'm willing to participate in that. I'm not trying to displace the responsibility to other people, but I'm just simply stating that we have to use our time better here.
Okay, I need to speak to this issue. I have been putting in untold hours on this. This is a very complicated set of comments. They don't easily fall into the categories, which is why we didn't put them in there. But I have offered and will continue to offer to have our subgroup meet, and Judith and Jeff have agreed. And I'm not sure, Kirk, that we're going to be able to come back with a very black and white set of issues that we can discuss here. Some of these things are a sense of the group. I'm not totally disagreeing with you, but I do feel that I want to give these comments their due. I'd be happy to have everybody look at them outside of this meeting, this whole section, and look at the proposed responses and comment on them. That would be very helpful. You know, I'm not trying to waste anybody's time, including my own. And I want us to get to the place where we're reviewing the document that we can take to the town board and that we all feel good about it. This is a challenging piece of our work to finish up on some of these comments, many of which are outside of our housing efforts. So my recommendation is, if you want to end now, we can do that, and that we convene our subgroup to finish going through this and make recommendations to the full task force. Let the task force know when those recommendations are ready, And in the meantime, if you want to review and suggest your comments, by all means, that would be welcome.
I think that's a good set of suggestions, Deborah, and by no means am I criticizing it, you or anyone about today. That was not the intent of my comment. My comment is simply that to try to make our task force operate as effectively and efficiently as possible.
Of course, we all have that goal.
And I don't, I agree, and I know that. And so, and if there's a burden upon individuals in this task force as a result of this report, I think the housing committee should know this, because if every single committee gave us what the housing committee has given us, we would have to extend this project for another 6 months.
I agree with that comment.
And so to me, this is a level of irresponsibility from the housing committee to not fully coordinate the comments and have it be an official document. What they did is they just took everybody's comments and slammed it into a document and pushed it over to us. And we now have to manage this. And so I find that a level of irresponsibility, frankly. And so if they were able to discuss this, they would see that a number of these things are administrative, and they weren't really even focused on the what we were trying to accomplish, which is revise the code. Okay, so there's a level of unconsciousness, if you will, about what the housing committee is given to in this document.
The one thing we can say, and I see other hands are up, is that I think it also reflects the fact that many people have seen this document and have not understood what is changed, what should be focused on, and what is in the purview of our group to address. So that's part of our messaging, I think, our responses. And, when we go to the public and explain how we went through the comments and what was relevant and what wasn't for our work. And I think we have to articulate that.
Yeah, we have 2 hands up, Jeff and then Laura. I don't know if that was the order of how they came up. Sorry.
Doesn't matter to me. I think it's fair for us to say to the housing committee, we've reviewed your disorganized document. Whether or not we use that word is another choice.
Something a little bit more.
We reviewed your comments, and we have attempted to figure out what from that actually applies to the zoning changes we're making, and we've resolved those comments. There are things in your comments that do not have anything to do with what we're doing. Again, wording might be better.
Wordsmithing.
And those should be taken up with the appropriate other committees, because this is 16 pages of stream of thought.
Exactly.
And that's not something that we can do in a not stream of thought kind of way.
Right. It's unfair.
It's
unfair.
Right. Yeah. So, and I think we've gone through this, I've gone through it a lot. Deborah's gone through it way more than I have. I don't know if there's anything really big in this that's different than what other people have said. So spending hours and days on this is, from my point of view, a waste of time now.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Laura?
Yeah, I just wanted, as Jeff was saying, you might want to change the words as you get back to the housing committee, because I do think that we need to remember that everybody's trying their hardest. Everybody's has good intentions. Everybody, this is a huge document, and they got through it. People gave answers. I also agree, everything is balanced at this point, and I appreciate Kirk saying, hey, we've got an end deadline. And at this point, we do have an end deadline, and it's important that we, do wrap up and finding a balance. And I'm happy to, and it sounds like we came on some things in this meeting where, as Deborah and Jeff and Judy, I know Kirk offered to help too, is doing a quick scan through the housing stuff and saying, not housing, separate bucket. And then you'll have a smaller list, and then whatever you all think, and then bring back, I'm still happy to use this time to whatever you all think we ought to have the full group review. I'm happy to spend this time doing it. So everything is balanced. So, and be nice. And be nice to the housing committee, because I think people had good
Absolutely.
intentions.
Absolutely.
Just to be clear, I'm not trying to be mean to the housing committee.
No.
That's
Please,
not
everybody.
supposed to be wordsmith.
No, I know, I know.
Just
Nobody's,
stick with
Their
you, Joanne,
thoroughness,
but-
it just went a little too far.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and maybe it was, maybe the, part of the mistake was trying to take it up at the end. But I will say they did flag the language on the affordability issue. And the fact that that's not an easy fix indicates how important it is that we actually get the county involved, get Nan looking at it to sort out the best way of articulating what we are trying to achieve with middle income housing, as well as obviously anything that addresses or that's required to be addressed in any subsidized housing that we want to include, because we do want to find ways to increase our housing opportunities in this town. And that's the whole purpose of this task force. So it's
Yes,
a balance.
that language is going to be recommended, forwarded over to Nan, and the other people, Kai is contributing to it.
Right.
And so I think that's moving forward. So at this point, and again, Deborah, thank you for your efforts today to try to get this addressed, and it's turning out to be, I'll use the word, a slog, if you will.
I'm
on this.
sorry I didn't have it more
Don't need to apologize, Deborah. You have put in endless amount of time beyond everyone else in this task force.
didn't
And
have it.
Yeah.
It got beyond my capacity, to be honest, to
yeah,
really sort it out. You
Right.
know?
And at a certain point, you put your head down and plow into it instead of thinking, wait a minute, I shouldn't do this.
Right.
Right. And I
Right.
do appreciate the administrative, just pinpointing administrative issues and other non-housing issues. That's really key.
I think that the subgroup could use a broad stroke on some of these areas, such as that, and then narrow the comments down. And there probably are one or two remaining that outside of the affordable housing language that need to be spoken to in our next meeting.
Okay.
And, but I wanted to just say again, this task force is known for being highly functional, and again, we all should all be proud of that. And we are in the final throes of this effort, and I'm trying to respect that as well, because all of us have spent 2.5 years on this effort. And I'm just trying to reach it to the point where we all feel very comfortable that what we're giving to Nan, and then what comes back from Nan, that we're comfortable with that and giving it over to the town board. And that's coming. That is on the horizon, approaching us quickly. So we have next week, we're going to meet again on Tuesday. We'll do any final reviews of everything there. And that should be the meeting that enables us to give everything over to Nan, with maybe an exception or two, possibly. Right? Deborah, do you feel?
Yeah,
like that?
just one other possible change in that Nan suggested we may want to check in with her sooner than later this week, because we may have stuff that we can give her this week that she can actually get going on. So it'll give her more time. It'll give us more time to just do the final of anything we still need to discuss and decide on next week. So I think it's a slight adjustment in terms
so
of
let's you and I plan, Deborah, let's you and I plan to meet with Nan and and give and hand over those things that this committee task
force and the subgroup, and then she can go with that, and then we'll be able to go from there.
And then we'll organize our next meeting on Tuesday, a week from today, at the same time, to be sort of the finals of the final issues, if you will, the final points that we need to discuss and vote upon. And that should get us in a position where everything's handed over to Nan, not including what we're going to give over to Nan this week.
Right.
So thank you, everyone, for your tolerance and patience, and the work we've done thus far. And unless there's any other final comments, are there any other comments to be made?
Deborah, you'll get back to me. You and Jeff will decide on a meeting.
Yes. Yeah.
I
think we can make it happen as early as tomorrow. That's great.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for paying attention. really
Yeah,
Yeah.
paying
Right.
close attention, everybody.
thanks.
Okay, talk to you in a week, if not before.
Yes,
Okay.
right.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.